Welcome to the Moms of Tweens and Teens podcast. If some days you doubt yourself and you don't know what you're doing, if you've ugly cried alone in your bedroom because you felt like you're failing, well, I just want you to know you're not alone and you have come to the right place. Raising tweens and teens in today's world is not easy. And I'm on a mission to equip you to love well and to raise emotionally healthy, happy tweens and teens that thrive. I believe that moms are heroes and we have the power to transform our family and to impact future generations. If you are looking for answers, encouragement, and to become more of the mom and the woman that you want to be, welcome. I'm Cheryl Gould, and I am so glad that you're here. Hi, friend. Welcome to the show today, and I'm so glad that you're here and listening in. And let me ask you a question. Do you ever feel like your mind is racing 100 miles a minute, like you're stuck on a hamster wheel of to-dos, worries, and what ifs? And I think every single one of us would raise our hand because here's the thing, it's so easy to get distracted or feel overwhelmed when we have so many things that we feel responsible for and we have life's demands, so much from us. But what if there was a way to train our minds to slow down, reset, and find calm amidst the chaos? Well, that's exactly why I'm so excited to have Kelly Smith with us today. And Kelly is a meditation teacher, yoga instructor, and the founder of Yoga for You. She is also the host of 2 incredible podcasts. In fact, I was feeling stressed today, and I just listened to one on mindful in minutes, and I cannot recommend her podcast highly enough. It has thousands of listeners. And then she also has Meditation Mama. And this is another great one for mothers of all stages of kids. So from expectant mothers to those with adult children. And she is going to talk to us today about what does meditation look like? Is it woo-woo like so many of us think? How can it help us in our day-to-day lives and parenting our kids? And she also came out with a new book, Meditation for the Modern Family. I know so often we can feel like we're running on empty. Just hearing her voice is so calming. I felt so much better after I just talked to her. So let's take a deep breath and let's jump in. Kelly, welcome to the Moms of Tweens and Teens podcast. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk about meditation, how you can help your kids, like all the good stuff.
I have enjoyed already talking to you and just your ease. And I've listened to your meditations and your calming voice. And I was doing deep breathing and relaxation. And I'm like, oh, I can't wait, to have you on here because we need it so badly to be able to get ourselves grounded, to be able to connect with ourselves. So I want you to tell a little bit about your story, but I also want us to talk about why this is important, because sometimes I talk to moms who are like, mindfulness, I don't know, that's a little woo-woo, and meditation, I don't know. I mean, how did you get into this? How has it helped you?
Oh my gosh, so much. First, I will say that I want to address the woo-woo first, because I hear this as well. And anyone who maybe looked at the title is starting to listen and automatically they're kind of like, ooh, meditation. I don't know. The first thing I want to say is meditation. Also, often people will say, is it against my religious beliefs? These are things that we explore. Meditation is just single pointed concentration. That's what we're going to be talking about is the practice of single pointed concentration. What that means is if you imagine your mind as a light bulb, when you're walking around every day, the light bulb's on, it's shining in different directions. But when we meditate, we're taking the light bulb and we turn it into a laser pointer and we focus that laser on one thing. You can decide if you're going to take that laser and you're going to point it to something, kind of woo woo if you want. I enjoy that sometimes. You also can point your laser at maybe your breath to really focus in on, can I stay with just one thing, one breath at a time? You can also point your laser at maybe something that's a part of your devotional practice, if that speaks to you. But meditation itself, in a nutshell, is just single pointed concentration. And then you get to decide where you point that laser and what it looks like for you. So it can be anywhere on the spectrum of religious to non-religious, woo-woo to totally not woo-woo, and everything in between.
So it's what works for you.
100%. And what you want it to be.
Okay. And I love how you explained that because it was so simple. And I find that just taking that focus to being, when you said like focusing in on something, what was the first thing you said? I've just never heard that.
Meditation is the act of single pointed concentration.
Single pointed what? Single pointed?
Single pointed concentration.
Okay.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. Because we're so, at least I'll speak for myself, and I know moms that you're listening, you're going to totally relate. My brain is either, and I have the ADHD brain, we'll talk about that, but it's either in the future a lot of the times worrying about what I got to do, where I got to be, or it's in the past, what I haven't done yet, or regrets, or I wish I would have done this differently, which I find so common with moms. And this is just calming all that down and focusing, concentrating on that single thing. So,
and easier said than done. I always say meditation is simple. It is not always easy because the concept of it is quite simple, but not always easy. And I think what you're describing perfectly like encapsulates that idea of like the mental load or like the invisible work that moms are doing day in and day out. I have two under the age of 4, and I constantly have, my laptop looks the same where I have my web browser with about 90 open tabs at the same time because I'm actively working on like 90 things at once. And that is how my brain feels as a mom. And it's really hard to be able to shift gears and to just be able to focus in on that one thing. So that's all we're talking about for anyone who is meditation apprehensive. Whether they feel it doesn't quite align with what they're doing, think of it as like lifting weights for your brain, where we're going to be doing strength training for the mind to be able to focus on one thing at a time and over time be able to extend the amount of time that we can focus. Because I also have ADHD and mom brain, which feels like, oh my gosh, like just like there's a ping pong ball going around in there back and forth all over all day long. And so to circle back to your original question, but I just wanted to touch on that in case, so we don't lose anyone from the get-go, for any of those like misconceptions of what meditation is. I first got into meditation when I was younger. I started in the yoga space. And I remember I started practicing yoga as cross training for my sports. I was an athlete through college. And I was so young, my mom would have to drop me off at like my yoga classes at like the gym that we'd go and work out at. And it's so interesting because at the time it wasn't cool. I feel like mindfulness, meditation, self-care, yoga, it's like so much cooler now than it used to be. And so I'd kind of, it was my secret little thing is that I was like a teen yogi on the side. But I always did yoga for like the physical. And then there were times in my life, one being when I was 16, my mom was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer, and I was one of her primary caregivers, and she's still with us today. But that was a really scary, tumultuous time. And that's when I think my eyes were really open to, one, not only the kind of therapeutic benefits of mindfulness that I saw in my own mother, that her oncologists were, telling her, visualization can help with your white blood cell count. Even, she was a member of her church and like they gave her this prayer shawl I remember really vividly, and her just trying to get to like a calm place, having this shawl that a lot of the people in the church had like prayed over. And slowing down. We would do yoga together, but then after, different surgeries, things like that, doing like slow restorative yoga instead of trying to just go and like, do like fitness yoga. And I also, at the time, I didn't know this is what I was doing, but in order to anyone who's been a caregiver listening, no matter what age you're a caregiver at, like it is a lot. And it is a big, it's moms listening. We're all caregivers every single day. But if you are particularly caregivers for someone who is going through something physical, mental, emotional, health wise, whatever it is, even caring for an elderly parent, it is a lot on your heart and on your mind. And at the time, I started doing some mindfulness practices. I didn't know what it was at the time, but like checking in with how I'm feeling, letting myself sit in my feelings, trying to breathe. I was getting very anxious. Of course, I was at this time worried about what was going to happen. And I didn't really do anything with it until I went to the classic, I graduated college, had a piece of paper that said I was, quote, qualified to do something, but I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So I did what many people do at that stage of what do I want to do, which is take a yoga teacher training. And so I did that. And then I started learning more about meditation. And I was still intrigued, but I felt like I couldn't really do it because I have ADHD. I now know that that's kind of like saying you're too dirty to take a shower. It's like, how are you going to remedy that? How are you going to remedy that? And also, I think people hadn't really explained the true benefits, which is why I'm so excited about our conversation of like, I need to know like why I'm doing something and what's actually happening, as opposed to like, well, you'll feel good, you'll be happier, which are all things that happen. But maybe it's my neurodivergence, but I want to know like the science and I want to know like what's happening. So then I went to a one Walmart town in Missouri. I moved for love for my husband, and I had to leave my job, leave my family, everything. And I decided I was going to follow my dream, which was to start teaching yoga. And I felt like in order to better serve my students, one of my blind spots was meditation. So I started really diving into learning about meditation personally, because I can't really teach anything I don't know. And that led to, I know this is a very windy, twisty tale, but that led me to finding a group of monks in the forest in southern Missouri that I found on the internet. My mother was convinced they were serial killers and they were trying to like lure me down. So any true crime fans out there, do not, now as a mother, I don't think I'd let my children do this, but I found these monks on the internet. They invited me to come live with them for a little bit, learn their style of meditation. I did. I took a vow of silence. I was supposed to turn in all my electronics, but I told them I had to keep my phone because I had to text my mom each night, let her know I was still alive. And other than that, all I did was meditate all day, took a vow of silence, studied loving kindness meditation. And I had such a profound experience during that time that it really kind of kicked me off on this journey of being not only a meditation lover, but fascinated by it and wanting to find ways to take this idea of meditation and share it in really simple, grounded, like tangible, take the big ideas, but then how do I apply it to my everyday life? How do I fit it into now my busy mom life? How do I use it to support my children? How do I share it with someone who's 16 and has a lot of anxiety because there's something going on in their house? How do I take the things that I can learn on the silent retreat with the monks and share it with people in a way that is easy to digest and applies to our everyday human experience? And so that has led us here. And I've just made meditation my love and my passion.
And I love that story. And you said that going and being with the monks was really life-changing. What was that like? What was life-changing about it?
Oh my gosh, everything. First, I've always been like someone who needs to do kind of like immersion learning. It's probably that like, hyperfixation piece that I have. But so many things were transformational about that experience. First things first, I think, was the vow of silence. I saw this meme, and Cheryl, I think you'll appreciate this because you're also a podcaster. It was like, oh, all you ADHD kids out there, how's your career in podcasting going? Which made me like laugh so hard because it's true that a lot of like a lot of us that just talked a lot and had a lot to say and have ADHD have found our stride in podcasting. And so being able to take a vow of silence, it was incredibly hard, but so impactful. And truly, my life hasn't been the same because I realized in that moment, I was also in my early 20s, mid 20s, like 25. I noticed how much I was talking just to fill space, to like make noise, to not feel uncomfortable being in a room with someone and just letting there be silence. I was uncomfortable with that. And until everyone's in the room and you have to be silent, you're like, wow, I actually don't need to talk as much as I feel like I need to. And it was, a little uncomfortable at first. You're walking around and you cross someone on, a path. And I grew up in the Midwest. So, we Minnesota nice. We try to be so nice to everyone. But, you don't really make eye contact. You just stay in your own little bubble. You don't really exchange pleasantries. And it honestly felt really nice after a while. Felt bizarre at first and then felt so good. And I really felt like I became in tuned with myself because there's so much less noise happening. Physical noise of it's just a quieter space when people are taking a vow of silence. Also, if someone was speaking or teaching, I was, listening to hear, not listening to respond. And I also found that reacclimating after those few weeks, that was tough because everything felt so loud after that. And I was kind of like, we don't need it to be this loud. We don't need to be talking this much. We can be more intentional with what we're saying. And that really changed my life. Also, being able to have an experience where I really could kind of step away from the world. And we would meditate. We had 3 big meditation sessions that were about 3-ish hours each. So we'd get up in the morning, like a 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. Then we'd have some breakfast. We'd do a little chore that we had to do in silence and mindfully. And I'll never forget my first day, I was assigned weeding the little paving stones that went from the meditation hall to the bathroom. And, there's those little paving stones and there's those tiny little weeds. And I'm there on my hands and knees. And I remember being like, again, like 26, I was so sassy. I was like, what is this dumb little thing that I'm doing here on my hands and knees, picking out these tiny little weeds on this pathway? And by the end of it, I actually really started enjoying my chore because the whole point was to do it intentionally. So I'd be like sweeping the meditation hall and I just have so much fun, like with my little Swiffer, just, making sure that I hit every little thing and hearing the sounds of the Swiffer, like just noticing so much more. It's just so much about really taking a break from the world, taking a break from noise, and then spending 9 hours a day trying to meditate. Because there's never a point in which you're like, I did it. I beat meditation. There's no really like end point, right? We're just practicing. And I did have some experiences where I felt like I really got to know myself better and unlocked just some deeper meaning of myself, which was really beautiful. But I mean, it was a wild experience.
Wow. You said so many. I've got all my little Post-it notes.
Oh, I love a Post-it.
You had to be like, how, that's what I love about meditation and being still and listening. Like, okay, how many noises do I hear in the room? And just trying to really listen, just being with yourself and not the performing. What you said was really profound, and I want moms to like soak this in, listening to hear, not to respond. And I think how, as a mom, how important that is with our kids. And I think with tweens and teens, we attach so much meaning to our kids' behaviors. And then we get fearful, and then we want to control. And just even listening, we're listening sort of, but we're already thinking about how we need to correct or how we need to respond. And in so many conversations, really, I can be sitting here with you and I'm already thinking, oh, what's my next question going to be? What am I going to, rather than just truly being with you on this podcast And I feel like that's what you're saying is you got, all that noise and all of that allowed you to be more present with people and not feel like you had to say something all the time. And yeah,
Yeah, that's one of my favorite, I guess, takeaways or lessons that I've learned because it goes twofold. I feel like in implementing that in my own life, and believe me, I don't always get it right by
yeah,
any means. And I find myself doing this as a mom to a toddler that sometimes I'll listen to to respond, but I'm ready to teach. And so I'm
yes.
listening to be like, oh, okay, this, I hear my 3-year-old having a meltdown and I hear what he's saying. I go, oh, emotion regulation. Here's what we need to do. Let's do our dandelion breath. Let's do, all of these things that you imagine a meditation teacher mom would do in these, really, high stakes 3-year-old big feeling moments. But not only does it help to listen to hear and really hear your kids, but I think this expands to just my relationships in general is that it feels so good to be on the other side of that and to just be heard. Like, I
Yeah.
think we all have the experience too, where you're having a conversation with someone. I certainly, family is tricky, certain there's always, family members, whatever it is. Maybe it's your parents, maybe it's your in-laws, maybe it's your sibling, maybe it's whatever. And you're trying to share something with them and you just really want to be heard, but you feel like maybe they're listening or they aren't listening because they're already forming what they want to say next
Yes.
without actually receiving what you're hearing. And I think it goes both ways, that it allows me to be able to be more present with the people in my life. And also I know how good it feels to feel like someone is listening to hear you.
Yeah. And I think that that's where, when you were talking about training your brain to slow down, like we have an agenda, or we assume we know what the other person is saying or what my kids are saying. And I realize I'm not really even listening to understand what they are saying. I'm putting my own stuff on them, and my own maybe agenda. And I find if I really listen or I'm curious or then I ask a question, it's never usually what I think. They don't usually say what I think that they're going to say.
Yep.
And yeah, do you find that doing the mindfulness and the meditation, has that really helped you with your ADHD?
It's helped me so much. And it's something, now that I am a mom and, the the tween and teen years happen to be some of the worst in my life. So that's why I particularly like to speak on it, because there's often times that I think back and there are a few different things going on. One, that was around the time I got my ADHD diagnosis. And I had been struggling up until that point academically. And as we know, kids can be very mean. And so I had a really hard time making friends. I felt very lonely. I felt very othered, very just, um, aren't we all just shaped by our seventh grade girl drama?
Oh, yeah.
It's such awful and but also transformative times of being a seventh grade girl. Just
Yes, we carry that little girl inside of us
we
and still can
do.
feel that way with adult women.
Yes. And so there's so many times I've thought back, knowing what I know now, and also helping parents and adults support their children with meditation and mindfulness, where I just think, wow, what if I would have known what I know now, or even had some of these tools in my toolbox, 5 years earlier, 10 years earlier, 20 years earlier? How different would my life experience have been if I had those tools in my toolbox? And one of those things that I think about a lot, other than navigating kind of the emotional ups and downs that I experienced in, the first 18 years of my life, but is being able to really flex kind of that concentration muscle, because my mind is always going a mile a minute. It's like that hamster spinning on the wheel. Motherhood is like this too, where you're just the faster you try to run, the faster it just spins. And the only way you can stop that spinning is you just have to get off of the wheel. But in order to do that, you need to become aware of wow, I'm just spinning, 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 and then train your mind to be able to slow down. Even something as simple as, this is one of my personal favorite practices, takes 3 minutes. You can wake up in the morning, take a few big deep breaths. You can do this at night too, and just ask yourself, What am I thinking about? How is my body feeling? What is on my heart today? That is like a meditation in and of itself. Get quiet, turn inward, ask yourself those three things. You will be shocked at the information that you get
Wow.
because we're always going so fast. We don't even realize, oh my gosh, my body is telling me like I'm so tired, or my body is telling me, our bodies can tell us many different stories. We're like,
Mhm.
what's on my heart today? I'm internalizing my own middle school experience and projecting it onto my daughter or my son. Or sometimes it's funny things. It's like, wow, I'm really thinking about what I'm going to pick up at Target later today when I have to go grocery shopping. But
Yeah.
that gives you so much insight into what's happening within you and all around you. And so, even something like that, we have to train ourselves to be like, okay, couple deep breaths, pause button. What is my body feeling? What's on my heart today? What am I thinking about? And it
Yeah.
can be simple and powerful like that.
So good. Self-awareness. Because as you were saying that, we just moved and I'm supposed to be having a wedding shower in 2 weeks. And all of our furniture does not fit in our place
Oh
because
no.
we downsized. And I am like agitated and because where's my brain? My brain is it's not going to be ready for this shower.
Mhm.
And then it's affecting my current mood, and that I'm in this stressful anxiety and producing, hamster wheel kind of mode. And then I'm impatient. I'm
Mhm.
impatient with my family because of that. So, okay. So, how would you coach me through that?
Well, first of all, I think you just coached yourself through it beautifully. I think that recognizing, if someone came to me and something I hear a lot and I also experience, again, I don't always get it right. We're all just human, is I sometimes get reactive and sometimes I yell at my kids. Or
Yeah.
sometimes I just kind of get so frustrated and I'm just, the noise and I'm just like, enough, or stop, just stop it. Just for 1 minute, stop, whatever. They're whatever. You guys know, you're all moms. I don't even have to tell you what the circumstances are. And your kids just have that way of knowing when you're like right on the edge of about to lose your mind. They know how to just like nudge you over the edge. Just
Oh,
give you that
yeah.
little nudge where you're like, I'm going to lose it now. And we all do it. So a lot of times I hear people, they come to me, they're feeling reactive, really reactive around their kids. They're feeling like they're not able to show up the way that they want to because they're always like so stressed, so burnt out, feeling like they're trying to do all the things all the time. They're, really like cranky, all these things. So I think what you did, first of all, was beautiful, is just, first of all, learning how to hit the pause button and then just asking yourself why. And
Yeah.
that takes a little bit of time and saying, why am I being so, short with my family members? Or why am I feeling stressed in this way? And it's like, well, I have a lot on my plate. I have the shower coming up. The furniture isn't fit, all of these things that are real life big things that are going to happen. And I think when you get, and you tell me, Cheryl, if you experience this, but even when you kind of have that flip of like, oh, it's because the shower's coming up and I'm feeling really stressed about that. That usually gives people even a little bit of a sense of calm right there. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, when we haven't pointed what's going on, we just feel really out of control. Like our emotions feel out of control, our mind feels out of control, we feel scattered, frazzled. But once you can pinpoint it, you can go, oh, that's what's going on here. It's so helpful. And then you can do something about it. So then, if I were continuing to coach you through it, the next step would be I would ask you more about the stress that you're experiencing. Like, do you feel it a lot in your physical body, or is it your mind, or are you just taking on a lot of the emotional weight? And then I would maybe make some different meditation suggestions based on what you told me this stress and this worry looked like for you.
Mm, I like it. Yeah, it's good.
But just truly awareness.
Uh-huh.
And one of the best pieces about meditation is it teaches you how to observe non judgmentally. And
I,
that is
mhm.
hard. The
That's
non
gonna
judgmental piece
be,
is hard.
yeah, that was going to be my next question. So please tell everybody because I think this is so important when you talked about sitting with your feelings. We don't want to feel. I'm going to stay busy so I don't have to feel. And yet that is so important. And I
Mhm.
loved mindfulness has helped me with my anxiety because it can just be like a cloud of anxiety passing through, and I don't have to judge it. Because if we're judging the anxiety, then what? I'll let
Not,
you, yeah.
nothing good happens. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
It never helps when you're sitting there and, mom guilt is so real. We're so hard on ourselves. We sometimes can be hard on one another, but learning how to observe objectively has been such a powerful tool that I've been able to add to my toolbox, especially being a mom, because then sometimes I can sit and I can just sit and observe that maybe I'm thinking this is hard. If I were to go down the this is hard judgmental path, I would say, well, but this is what you wanted. Well, you wanted your kids. Well, what about all those months you were, peeing on those sticks and it was saying negative and you were so sad? Well, you know, of course this is hard. You're a mom. Maybe you're just not trying hard enough, right? We start telling ourselves all of these things and it just turns into this big snowball versus being able to sit and observe this feels really hard, right? Or this is really hard right now. And sitting with that non-judgmentally is, a very different story. It's, yeah, like, of course it does. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is hard right now. And that's okay. And the non-judgmental piece, I think about this a lot with my little guy, my toddler, is there's so many things I give him grace for in like the feelings department, or, if he's being frustrated, he's being hard, I'll hear myself saying, yeah, you're right. This is hard. And I'll do it for him in a second. But then for myself, I can't be like, wow, you know what, Kelly, this is hard. We're like, of course you're tired. You're doing all of this stuff.
Yeah.
You're doing all these things. You're, not sleeping well. You're worried, or, of course you're feeling sad. And just learning how to observe the feeling and letting it exist. Feelings aren't bad or good. Of course, there are some that are more pleasant than others. Feelings, though, aren't bad. Even ones we're kind of conditioned as moms and as women to think are bad, like anger,
Mm.
frustration,
Yeah, sadness.
yeah, that a good mom is just happy all the time and
Yeah.
fulfilled by just the existence of her children 24/7. And that's not true. That's, that's baloney. But being able to non-judgmentally observe what's happening can give you so much insight into what is happening in your life, in your heart, and gives you the clarity you need to start doing something about it. Whether you're like, I feel anxious, I feel really anxious. And now that I think about it, I feel this racing heart rate all the time. I wonder if my anxiety is getting a little out of hand. Then you can do something about it instead of just diving into those anxious thoughts all the time. And then you can start learning, just like you said, to let the anxious thoughts move through like a cloud. Or I think about it as like if you're watching a river, a leaf falls down a little farther up the river, it just moves down the stream, and then just
Ah,
let it keep moving down the stream. I just think it's such a powerful tool to have in your toolbox to train yourself to be able to observe non judgmentally.
it's beautiful. And you have, I think I count like 473. That's, I think, only on one, maybe, because you have two podcasts.
I
And,
do.
and then you have to tell them about your book because you have a
Oh,
book for families. So
yeah.
tell
Well,
us about that.
okay. Well, thank you for letting me share all of that. I can't remember, Cheryl, how long you've been doing your show. But Mindful in Minutes is about to turn 7. That's my first podcast, which like in podcasting years is like geriatric. So
Wow.
when I first started, it's so funny. The hardest part when I first started is I had to tell people what a podcast was and how to listen.
Isn't
And that
that
was like the
amazing?
hardest part was people were like, a podcast. So you're on the radio. Like, what do you do? Like, I had to explain what it was and like how to listen to it. And now it's like this big booming industry. And, there's so many better tools, everything. It's been really cool to be a part of an industry and watching it grow in real time while I'm in it. But yes, there are like coming up on 500 different episodes on Mindful in Minutes. Most of them are guided meditations. I love nothing makes me happier than being able to like sit down, write a guided meditation for a different topic, like an everyday life thing, lots on anxiety, sleep, stress, morning practices, but also more niche things like releasing resentment, unlocking your courage, all of that. I love creating those. And so there's tons of those over in Mindful Minutes. They're all less than 20 minutes because studies tell us we actually only need 8 to 12 minutes a day of meditation to get the physical, mental, emotional benefits, which for all my moms out there, and I hear you, we are busy. And if you're thinking, okay, Kelly, this sounds great, but I don't have an extra 30 minutes or 60 minutes every day. I can't go live with monks and take a vow of silence. Me either. I did that in my mid 20s in a very different, life stage. Now as a mom, I am not doing that. Many times am I like, you know what? I have these 10 minutes. It's rarely in the morning because I'm still in the stage of being woken up by my kids instead of, I know one day, I'll wake up on my own again. So usually it's at night when I finally
One
got
day
everyone
you
to
won't
bed.
be able to get him out of bed.
I believe it. I believe it. They are still on the love to wake up at like 5:30 in the morning and just, we've already lived 2 lives before like 9 a.m. rolls around. So I like to do it at night, 10 minutes before bed, get everyone else to sleep, take those 10 minutes. And I want everyone to hear this and absorb this, that your 10 minutes of meditation is not selfish and that you doing this thing for you is not selfish. A well cared for mother leads to well cared for children. So if anyone's struggling with that, I want you to hear that. And I like to do it to just turn the volume down on my day and prepare myself for sleep. And it works really well. And I do 10 minutes and this is my whole career. And I know that's all I need to get the benefits of it. So you do not need a lot of time to meditate. And then my second show is called Meditation Mama. And it's mostly prenatal, postpartum, and little kid meditation practices. It was my pandemic baby project. My first was, I found out I was pregnant March of 2020. So I found myself pregnant with a lot of anxiety and a lot of extra time on my hands. So I made a second podcast to support other women during that time. And then my book is called Meditation for the Modern Family. It's my book baby. I'm really proud of it. And it is a book all about how to weave meditation and mindfulness into the family system, all the way from pregnancy through how can you use it to support yourself as the adult. And there's partner meditations too. And then the bulk of it is 35 different topics, things that pop up in the household: anxiety, courage, resilience, nightmares. And then there's some learning and teaching around that. And then 3 guided practices, one for your little ones, one for your adolescents, one for teens and adults, and then some mantras that you can use in your household to support the work that you're doing with that. So that's my book baby.
Wonderful. What an important book.
Thank
And
you.
when it comes to meditations with a tween or teen, how would you recommend that moms can encourage their kids? Do you suggest they do it with them? How should they go about that?
It usually goes one of 2 ways. And I'm sure every mom listening is going to know immediately which way it would go with their children. If your child, you're either going to do it with them or you're going to totally like hands off and let them do it themselves. So if they're in the, mom, I don't want to do things with you stage, I highly recommend you can just kind of talk to them about meditation, ask them what they know about it. So even if you are more well-versed in meditation or you've been dabbling in it yourself, you can just be like, hey, I was listening to this podcast the other day and they had this meditation teacher on. It's kind of interesting. I feel like you're really in tune with this stuff. What do you know about meditation? Or like, do you know anything about this? And kind of let them kind of lead the conversation. These are going to be for my more independent, mom, I don't want to do that with you, kind of kids. They're like, oh, there's mom again talking about, things. Let them lead the conversation. And then you can say, I was kind of thinking as I heard that woman talk, I know you've been saying you're having a hard time with anxiety in school. And she was talking about, this is something we can talk about, but meditation is actually phenomenal for anxiety because it changes your brain. It shrinks the anxiety center, the amygdala, and it boosts the prefrontal cortex, which helps with focus and emotion regulation. So you can say, she's talking about how when you meditate for a few minutes every day, it actually starts to change your brain. So you have smaller physiological anxiety responses. And I was thinking maybe that would be good for you. Do you want me to like pick you up some books on it? Or do you want me to look up classes? Or maybe you want to look into it? What do you think? Those are for, my independent kids. The ones that are still, want to hang out with you and want to do things, I really recommend kind of pitching it as this fun, special thing that you can do together. So maybe you say, hey, you know what I was thinking? If you can get them out of bed, say, hey, you know what I was thinking? I know you've been feeling really stressed about school, feeling really anxious. I was thinking that maybe in the mornings before everyone else wakes up, we could get up first before we get your brother and your sister, and we could listen to a little meditation together for 5 minutes just for this week. And let's see what happens. And kind of pitch it as like this fun, special, just for them thing. Or you can say, hey, do you want to go to a yoga class with me? Or, I picked up this book. Do you want to read it together? Kids love having that like one-to-one time, even if they're giving you a hard time, be like, oh, mom, they crave that kind of special, like, especially if you have multiple kids. I'm learning this myself as I now have two in the house. They want their individual special time with their parents and with their mom. So kind of pitching it as like, hey, what if we do this kind of fun thing? What do you think about that? I find those are the two best ways for that age group to kind of, float the idea past. And your kids probably know more about meditation than you do. I don't mean that in like a shady way. I mean that in like, I do feel like in our schools, even like social media, maybe they've been scrolling on TikTok, they've seen a manifestation meditation come up. Like they're so dialed in and they probably know more than you think. And they
Yeah.
might be able to teach you something.
Mm-hmm. I like how you ask them to join you. It's not something you're forcing on them. You're inviting, you're asking a question to spark a
Mhm.
curious question to spark conversation. Something that I did, and you have so many meditations, and one I noticed, I think you did it recently, was You Are Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, what a cool thing because with my daughters, I had them listen to some things, like maybe it was ocean waves, but you could say to your daughter, oh, there's this meditation that I just heard about You're Beautiful. We could lay on your bed and listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
And something like that. Because my daughters, when they had trouble sleeping, listening to something like that was helpful for them. Just
Mm-hmm.
introducing them to what you're doing on your podcast, because you have
Yeah.
so many different ones. I wrote down like celebrating failure, nervous system regulation, nervous reset, just encouraging them, like maybe you want to listen to this. This might be helpful to you when you go to bed.
I do hear from families that do that, and it makes me feel so good when I hear like, oh, my teenage daughter and I, listened to this meditation of yours together. And I think that's just like the sweetest thing
Yeah.
to do. And also, I think I talk to a lot of people about, they say, oh, our guided meditations like quote cheating or something, or oh, well, if I'm just listening to something, does that really count? It does really count. And it's so helpful, I think, to have someone that is just going to walk you and your child like through the process where you just have to listen. And another thing, as you were speaking, I thought about how important it is to model these types of things for our children. So even if you pitch the idea, say, hey, what do you think about getting 5 minutes, of just us meditation time? And they're like, no, I hate that idea. Okay, fine. Yeah, okay. There, you can't, you can't hit all the shots, but modeling this for your kids, I think, is really important as well, where you can model introspection, slowing down, self-care in a way that isn't, all like bubble baths and pedicures and all of that, mental health self-care, and letting them maybe see you meditate, or if you just casually mention that you've started doing this and modeling it for them, I think is really powerful, because sometimes with this age group, I mean, they're paying attention to more than you think. Even if they seem like they're not really paying attention to you, they're paying more attention than you think. And so it might be something, or maybe they don't want you to engage in this conversation with them, but then maybe they start looking it up on their own. Maybe they find their own meditation podcast they want to listen to. But I think modeling this slowing down and mental health work through mindfulness and meditation care in this way is a really powerful message to our kids, specifically in this age group.
I agree. I think modeling it is one of the most important things that we can do. And they do catch it. I found as my kids got older, things that they weren't willing to do when they were in the teen years, if I had modeled it for them, the likelihood of them actually embracing that as they got older, really it took root. And so I
Yes.
agree. Yeah.
And your kids, I heard this from a woman who came on a retreat with me, and she said her kids started calling her Zen Jen. And her kids were like older, so they love to give, their mom like a hard time. They were, like late teens, early 20s. But she had picked up a meditation practice. And she said that basically her kids started seeing the change in her, and they started calling her Zen Jen. So like when they would give her a hard time or they try to push her buttons and she didn't completely blow her top, they'd be like, "Oh, Zen Jen came to dinner tonight." I mean, you have adult kids. I give my mom a hard time all the time too. It's funny. It's fun. And but then they became much more interested in it because it's like they saw those positive changes in their mom. And then that made them more intrigued. Like, okay, like mom is, she's not just Jen, she's Zen Jen now. And she said that they really became more interested in what she was doing when they started to see those changes in her and see that she was becoming calmer, less reactive, could slow down a little bit. And then they were like, wow, this stuff really kind of works. And then they were enticed by it. So that could be something too. If you start it yourself, your kids might start to notice and pick up on some of these positive changes in you. And that might be something they're craving for themselves.
Love it. Well, Kelly, tell them, where do they find you? Where I'll put all the show notes in. Where can you're on Instatimer now, I noticed.
Yes, I
It's
am.
so exciting. And your book's out. So congratulations on that. You can even get it at Target. I saw that it's
Yeah.
available through Target. So tell them, where do they find you?
Yes. So you can find me for guided meditations pretty much anywhere. Mindful in Minutes is my podcast. Wherever you're listening to our voices, you can put that in a little chat box, a little search bar, and find me there. Or if you're in that prenatal postpartum fertility stage of your life, you can look for Meditation Mama. And then you can find my book, Meditation for the Modern Family, or I have a second called You Are Not Your Thoughts, which is just for anxiety. Those are available at all major online book retailers. So you could pick it up online at Target, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all the places. And then you can check out my website, yogaforyouonline.com, or on Instagram, which is at Yoga for You Online. And if you have any questions or thoughts about what we shared, I do check my DMs, and I love to chat with people over there. So if you have any follow-up questions specifically on how this stuff can apply to your household, just let me know.
Yeah. So Kelly, thank you so much for what you're doing and for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This was like the highlight of my whole day.
Well, that's it for today, friend. And thank you for spending time with me today. And I just want you to know that here at Moms of Tweens and Teens, I want you to know that you're not alone. And I am here to walk alongside of you. And we have so many resources, and we have a membership and a community. So I encourage you to go to our website, momsoftweensandteens.com, and you can sign up for the newsletter, and you'll know when there's free workshops. We have a book club. We are launching a new membership, and I am just so excited about our app and all the things that are going to happen in this new year to support you and to help equip you and help you to know that you are not alone, and to be able to have that kind of relationship with your kids and your family that's meaningful and connected and strong. So if you haven't already, sign up for our newsletter, or if you got something from this episode, please leave a review so other moms and caregivers can find us here. Thank you, and have a great week, and I will see you back here next time.